Welcome to In-Depth, a show that looks at mining developments in North America and South America. Rio Tinto and Ivanhoe mines are headed to arbitration over a shareholder rights plan adopted by Ivanhoe, which Rio Tinto says infringes on its contractual rights. Mining Weekly's deputy editor for North America, Lizzo Hugh, joins me from Toronto to talk about the story. Welcome to the show, Lizzo.
Thanks, Martin.
What is the agreement all about between these two companies?
Well, just to go back a little bit, Rio Tinto owns a 29.6% stake in Ivanhoe mines, and it actually has a right to increase that holding to as much as 46.6%. Ivanhoe sold those shares and also entered into agreements allowing Rio to increase its holding further over time to fund initial work or for money that it needed for the big Oyu Tolgoi copper project in Mongolia. These two companies have been working for a while, Ivanhoe with its more influential partner Rio Tinto, with the Mongolian government to sign a key investment agreement that the company needed to start looking at financing for the big project and also to begin construction in earnest. Now that agreement was signed last year. So that was a key advance for the project. The next real development that we've seen for Oyu Tolgoi was in May, Ivanhoe presented what it called an integrated development plan for the project. This was quite a key development. It was presented with quite a lot of excitement. Ivanhoe touting the project as one of the top 3 copper gold projects in the world, talking about how a 59-year mine life estimate was conservative. But the real important thing about this was it was the first time in a while that the market got a look at some firm numbers for the project, things like annual production estimates, capital cost estimates, and so on. So really, this was important because it was an opportunity for anyone who might be interested in trying to get a foot maybe in the door to try and become involved in Oyu Tolgoi, for them to start looking at maybe calculating things like valuations. And so then if we just step back a month, it was possibly anticipating this, that Ivanhoe in April gave its shareholders a vote on what we call a shareholder rights plan, or a poison pill, and this was then approved by shareholders. Essentially what it does, or these rights are, these plans, it's not particularly unusual. They're put in place by companies who just want to ensure that in the event of a hostile takeover or a change of control, that minority shareholders as well as the board have an opportunity to evaluate the offer and consider the options and potentially look at other options. And in this case, what Ivanhoe's done is it said that any shareholder or any party that wants to increase its shareholding in Ivanhoe beyond 20% will then need to make an offer to all shareholders. It's not really a across-the-board thing, because obviously Rio Tinto's got already more than 20%, it's got almost 30%, and it has a contractual right to then increase it to almost 47%. So in Rio Tinto's case, it applies to that right that they have, that they're not allowed to increase it beyond that. And also their famous executive chairperson and mining promoter Robert Friedland also owns more than 20%, so it will also apply to his current shareholding in his case. So all this happened, the shareholders approved it, it didn't really cause too much excitement at the time, but now it's just recently emerged that Rio Tinto was not happy about the adoption of the shareholder rights plan. Apparently their only representative on the board of Ivanhoe at the time, Andrew Harding, he was the only director to have opposed the rights plan. And now Rio Tinto says what it's doing is it's actually going to take Ivanhoe to arbitration to try and resolve this dispute. It says that the shareholder rights plan breaches the terms of agreements between Ivanhoe and Rio Tinto. And Ivanhoe, for its part, shot back very quickly to say it completely backs its shareholder rights plan, it's not backing off, and it says that there's nothing in the rights plan that breaches any agreement between Ivanhoe and Rio.
Would we then say that cracks are beginning to appear in the partnership?
Yes, I think to a certain extent, absolutely. I mean, the two companies have worked together on this project and on securing the investment agreement with the government of Mongolia, which really was quite a protracted and difficult process, and they've worked together presenting a united front on this whole thing for some time now. But now that the construction is underway, if you look out on the horizon, they're counting down the years to when they first start production at Rio Tintos. And so I think Rio Tinto now wants to start looking at how this is all going to shake out and making sure that it, first of all, has a seat at the table in determining the future of the project, as well as potentially maybe looking at buying control of either Ivanhoe or control of the Rio Tintos project. It's also, just talking about the dynamics of the relationship, it's also quite an interesting development. Last week, Rio Tinto made an interesting filing to the SEC in the US, in which it said, or disclosed that, it said it's been talking to Ivanhoe about this, but it says it would like to convert its shareholding in Ivanhoe, because remember, Rio actually doesn't have a direct stake in the Rio Tintos project. It's purely through its holding in Ivanhoe. So Rio says it wants to start looking at how, or if possible, to convert that shareholding in Ivanhoe into a direct holding in Rio Tintos. And even more interesting, as you know, Rio Tinto's biggest shareholder is the Chinese metals group Chinalco. And Rio apparently has been having some chats with Chinalco about Rio Tintos, because it says that Chinalco may also be interested in taking a minority holding either in Ivanhoe or in the Rio Tintos project. So I imagine Ivanhoe reading these things, and especially Robert Friedland, who's really been instrumental in promoting this project and generating excitement around it. He's quite a big name here, at least in Canada, in mining. I imagine they were a little put out maybe to read Rio Tinto making these plans for their future and for the future of the project. But then coming back on the other hand, still on the relationship, it's been pointed out that if you look at this dispute over the shareholder rights plan, Rio Tinto did make the decision to go to arbitration rather than calling lawyers and getting into some sort of court battle, which might have turned a bit uglier. So there is that element of still trying to keep things friendly, I suppose.
And what do you make of Ivanhoe's announcement that it is planning to terminate a strategic purchase agreement?
Yeah, it is very interesting, I think, especially following very shortly on the heels of that SEC announcement that Rio, or the SEC filing that Rio made. Essentially what Ivanhoe's done is it's given Rio Tinto the 60-day notice that it's going to terminate a covenant in the investment, or in the agreement that governs the investment by Rio Tinto in Ivanhoe. So this, it's called the Strategic Purchases Covenant, and basically it's been in place since 2007, and till now it's restricted Ivanhoe from issuing shares worth more than 5% of the company to any third parties. So with that gone, Ivanhoe has now made the decision, its board met, to terminate that covenant. That it does give an Ivanhoe, I mean, the company's looking at financing a 4.6 billion mine. So it does give it a little bit more options as it looks towards the future, and potentially opens the door for some other third parties to kind of get their toe in the crack. So it will be interesting to see what happens. For now, there's a lot of moving parts. Rio Tinto has the right to match any share sales that Ivanhoe makes to a strategic investor. Also, Rio is subject to a standstill agreement that restricts it from increasing its shares in Ivanhoe beyond the 46.6%. But I think the interesting thing will come in October next year, October 2011, is when that standstill agreement expires that Rio has with Ivanhoe. So in the run-up to that point, obviously Ivanhoe is going to be working on looking how it's going to put together this huge financing package for the mine. Rio is going to be looking at what it wants its position in the project to be, and potentially third parties might start entering the picture. So I think once we get to that point, that's towards the end of next year, I think that we should see a bit of excitement and maneuvering around the whole situation.
Well, thank you, Lizo. That was the show for today. Join us again next week for more news and insight on mining in the Americas. Thank you. I'm Martin Joaquin in Johannesburg.